Yes, the title is correct. I took the worst airline in Canada. If you didn't see my last video, I was in Mexico for a week with my friend and we took the cheapest flight that we could find. In Canada, we have this airline called Flair and their flights can be as low as $150. But it does come with a catch. Everything on the plane does cost extra. So a while back, me and my friend decided we wanted to get away from the cold snowstorms in Toronto, Canada. So I started to look at flights to Mexico. And the average flight to Mexico from Toronto is about $600 to $800. And that was kind of out of my budget until I saw flights from Flair for $300 round trip. And it kind of seemed too good to be true, so I booked it right away. So I got curious, and why are these flights so cheap? So I looked up the reviews for Flair and my jaw dropped. From canceled flights to awful customer service, I started to rethink my decision for using Flair. For the next month, I was actually really nervous for my flight because I didn't want anything to go wrong. And I was actually debating to get a refund. But I wanted to get over my nerves and decided if I'm gonna use Flair, I'm gonna have to be prepared. So my goal for this flight was to make it as cheap as possible, because when you book your flight, you go through pages and pages of additional things the airline tries to sell you, like this $100 carry-on and checked bag bundle, and that's per flight. So I'm just taking my backpack to Mexico. For a week straight, I was watching other people's experiences with Flair, and I saw some pretty concerning stuff. Like, they're very strict with backpacks for some reason. Like, there's a specific measurement and weight your backpack needs to have, or else they'll charge you extra for a carry-on bag. And I've been reading articles where apparently the reason they're strict about backpacks is because the workers get commission for every person they upcharge for a carry-on. Like, what? If that's true, that is so messed up. There's also bad reviews about the delays, so I'm gonna be checking their website constantly for updates on their flight status. And apparently their comfort level is not the greatest on their flights, so I'm not gonna be looking forward to that. I'm gonna be going through my journey with Flair with you guys, and I'm gonna give my final ratings with categories of boarding, comfort, onboard experience, and finally, your value for your money. And I'm gonna be giving the final ratings at the end of the video. My day started at 4:30 a.m. to catch my 7:30 flight. And after hearing the strict backpack rumors, I came up with a plan. Since my backpack can't hold 1 week worth of clothing, I'm gonna be wearing all of my clothes to the airport so my backpack can fit on the plane. I also checked in online because if you don't, there's a $25 fee at the airport. So from downtown, we drove to Pearson and we were making good time. There was also no delays, so I was pretty happy. We got to our gate on time and everything was going super smooth for now. We waited and waited and waited and waited, and my nerves started to come back. During our boarding time, our plane wasn't even there and there was no Flair workers in sight. I started sweating and it wasn't because of the 7 layers of shirts that I was wearing. And I'm not lying when I say this. A guy beside us that was also waiting for the flight told us that Flair changed gates without telling us. No emails, no texts, nothing. So we walked over to our new gate and we literally got there right as they were closing the doors. And the worker there told us that they couldn't contact us because their systems were down. Like, what? We almost missed our flight because they couldn't contact me. But we finally got on the plane and got to our seats. It was actually pretty nice. There was barely anybody on the plane. I had the whole row to myself. The legroom wasn't much, but my knees were still not touching. I wanted to put my seat back, so I started pushing the button, but nothing was happening. So I guess the button was there as a prank. The next thing I noticed was their menu, and there was no free food, but the craziest thing was you had to pay for water, which is so crazy to me. I would not be surprised if they charged you extra to use their washroom on the plane. I will be honest, it was a pretty rough trip. It was impossible to fall asleep. So whenever I tried, my head just kept bobbing up and down. Also, I couldn't stretch my legs, so I was really sore when we landed. And that was my flight. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't amazing. And then after an awesome week in Mexico, I had to come home. And the flight back was pretty bad. First of all, the flight was delayed for an hour and a half, so we were waiting for quite a long time. And on the plane, it was very packed. I was in the middle seat between two people, and it was awful. It was impossible to fall asleep. I kind of just like sat there for 5 hours doing nothing like this. And that was it. That was my experience with Flair. And now I want to give it my rating. For starters, boarding. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Just because the first flight wasn't delayed, but they did not notify me that they changed gates. So I almost missed my flight because of them. Also, for the strict backpack rumors, they didn't even check my backpack. So wearing all of my clothes at the airport was just useless. Next is comfort, and it's kind of obvious, but I'll give it a 3 out of 10. Just the fact that you can't recline your seats is really weird, and you have very minimal legroom, so that made it very less enjoyable. So if you're looking to fall asleep on Flair flights, you're not going to. And for onboard experience, I'll give it a 5 out of 10, just because there's no TVs. So if you didn't download any movies on your phone, you're kind of stuck doing nothing. And all the small fees like snacks, water, and if you want to change your seat, it's also like another $25. So that kind of ruined it. But the staff was really friendly and they did not hate their jobs, so it wasn't all terrible. Lastly, value for money, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It's not bad if you're looking for a cheap flight. You're saving a lot of money, so if you're just looking for something to get you from point A to point B, then Flair is pretty good. Even if you're paying extra for food and water, you're still saving hundreds of dollars compared to other airline companies. So yeah, I would definitely use Flair again if I'm traveling somewhere for like a few days, because if you do need to bring a lot of clothes and bags, then the fees will start to add up. So I would recommend Flair if you're only using a backpack or if it's like a really short trip, because I cannot imagine flying with Flair if it's more than 5 hours. So that's it. That's my review and experience with Flair. I'm going to end the video there. If you are new, please subscribe and I will see you next time. Peace.